meeting. So I'm joining in from Shepparton. So I want to acknowledge the people from the Yorta people. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and any elders and people from other communities who may be here today. So today we're going to be presenting from the regulatory requirements in relation to trade waste, biosolids, and sewage sludge. So we got Carlos and Shabazz who are going to be presenting that. And now I'm going to hand over to Arabin to give a proper presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rodrigo. My name is Aravind Surupaleni. For those of you who don't know me, I am from Southeast Water. I'm also wear a different hat at Biosolids Training Center. I'm the Deputy Director for the 2-year-old Biosolids Training Center at Taramati Bandura campus. I'm also the Program Manager for this Biosolids and Resource Recovery Group for the IWN. And Rodrigo is our program deputy program manager. So it's a great team we have within IWN family. It's my pleasure to introduce to this audience the two great speakers from EPI who are really happy, agreed to give us a webinar series on various topics. Some of you might have, or most of you might have attended two seminars before Christmas and late last year. And we have 3 more lined up, including this one this year so far. Okay, both Shabazz and Carlos are both chemical engineers. Shabazz has more than 22 years of experience in manufacturing, technical support services, and environmental consulting. Of those 22 years, 16 years he has spent with EPI. He is a scientist there at with the Land and Waste Sciences Group. And Shabazz is highly knowledgeable of environmental regulation compliance, enforcement matters, and chemical project management. I'm not going to read the whole of bio, but very, very impressive bios for both Shabazz and Carlos. I think Elisa is going to put them in the chat, right, Elisa? And yep. Carlos has over 20 years experience with the projects in major hazard facilities, heavy industries, and academia as well. He also worked in the private sector, and Carlos is a senior waste engineer at EPI. And Carlos had a hands-on experience in plant operations, engineering, and operability studies from leading projects around Australia. I think with the short introduction, I think we want to spend more time listening to them and asking questions. But I think this year, just one thing I will say, this biosolids is, even though it's waste for long, so many years and so many decades or centuries, I think the issues around biosolids and the confusion between biosolids and sludge still remains. So hopefully, both Shabazz and Carlos will give us a bit more clarity to those terminologies and also highlight a bit more about the current approval pathways within EPI. So I hand over this to Shabazz and Carlos. I don't know who's doing first, but over to you, folks.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, so I'll start first. So let me just fix some technical issues here. So can you guys see a blue screen?
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
All right, so the topic that we are going to be covering today is regulatory requirements around trade waste, biosolids, and sewage sludge. We won't be talking about today about technical specifications or process conditions of your wastewater treatment plant or greenhouse gas emissions associated with those activities. So our focus today is going to be more on these two areas. So trade waste and sewage sludge. So these two. We may talk a little bit about the regulation around the process, but most of the conversation today is going to be around trade waste, sewage, sludge, and biosolids. So let's start with trade waste. And I'm just gonna bring some of the definitions from the acts and the regulations to give us a bit of background on those definitions. So the three main sources where you can find definitions about trade waste are the Water Act 1989, the Water Trade Waste Regulations 2014, and the Environment Protection Regulations of 2021. So I'm just gonna show you a couple of slides of each of them. So for the Water Act, I'm not gonna go through the whole definition, but and I put the references here so you can digest this definition. But the main thing that we want to show here is from the Water Act, trade waste means any waterborne waste other than sewage, which is suitable according with an authority to discharge into the sewage system. And then there are other conditions that they could be met to call downstream trade waste. Now the second one, from the Water Trade Waste Regulations 2014, so you got all these definitions. So trade waste for the purposes of the Act are all these type of streams, and you can find them here. And I'll leave the. Oh, by the way, you all will receive some handouts, so don't worry about them. Catching these links, so you'll get them. So from these Water Trade Waste Regulations 2014, so this is these are few of those definitions of what is trade waste. Then from probably the most common source that we use in the regulatory framework is the Environment Protection Regulations. So I think that so the main definition here is trade waste has the same meaning as the Water Act. So that was the first one that we mentioned. And the other good definition that you can find here is about wastewater. So what is wastewater? So wastewater means principally consisting of water and includes any of the following. So includes sewage, washdown, irrigation or contaminated stormwater, water containing any commercial, industrial, and trade waste. So that's the slightly difference between definition between wastewater and trade waste. So I'll just bring you back to the first one. So probably this is the one that I want you to remember. So this is trade waste. So, and then the other definition that is important from the Environment Protection Regulations 2021 is Regulation 63. But more than a definition is a section on the Regulation 63 where it talks about as it says here, for the purposes of paragraph E of the definition of authorized to receive industrial waste, a person, place, or premise is authorized to receive a type of industrial waste in relation to trade waste for discharge or deposit into the sewage system. So this is the part of the regulation that allows a water corporation to receive trade waste. So that's in summary, like where you can find those definitions of trade waste. And now Shabazz is gonna show you guys some definitions and some concepts around biosolids. Yeah. So I'll just leave the microphone to Shabazz.
Thank you, Carlos. Carlos, can you please just go to the previous slide first?
This one.
Yeah. No, the previous slide, the last slide which you showed.
This one, biosolids.
No, yes, Carlos, just go to the previous slide which you finished first.
Yeah, this one, regulation or the definition.
No, which you finished, the previous one.
The
this one.
This one.
Yeah. So no, just go next one. Regulation 63 one.
This one.
Yes, here. Okay, just stay here first. Oh, yeah, here. Okay. From here, before I just go to biosolid and trade waste, because this to understand this one, as Carlos was explaining about the trade waste, is very important, because in C, as you can say, deposit into the sewerage system. If you go to the definition in the regulation, which is slide, I think number 6. Let's go to slide 6, please. Carlos?
Yeah, this one is number 6.
Yes, here. Slide 6, it's why that was a big issue for EPA to manage industrial waste and trade waste. If it's the part B, which is any waste matter. If any waste matter, if you check, the detail of any waste matter, all food waste, which is from residential area and other areas, is called trade waste under the regulation. And this was one of the reasons why we were not able to manage properly food waste. And now in regulation 63, it is mentioned that is connected to sewer. So that is a very big change in the new act now, which has given us the authority to say that trade waste is industrial waste if it's connected to sewer. And that is the big change, in 2017. Thank you, Carlos. Now my slides, just want to cover that. Let's go to the biosolids now.
Here you go.
No, the next one. Yeah, yes. So okay, the biosolid past and present. In 1970 Act, oh, what is happening? Yes, in 1970 Act, which is the previous act, it's two regulations were there. So one was Industrial Waste Resource Regulation 2009, and the other one Environment Protection Schedule Premises Regulation 2017. These two regulations actually provided the framework that how biosolids can be managed in Victoria. As you can see, the Schedule 1 of Industrial Waste Resource Regulation, number 1 says biosolids managed in accordance with specification acceptable to authority. If biosolids were managed in this way, then they were considered industrial waste. If they were not managed in that way, they were Schedule 2 waste. And Schedule 2 waste was prescribed industrial waste, which is currently, we can say, hazardous waste. The same way, well, now the question is, what is the specification? I'll come to that one in a minute. Then the second regulation was Schedule Premises Regulation, which that explains, the activities and how how the exemptions can be obtained. And one of the regulation was Regulation 12 of Schedule Premises Regulation that specify if biosolid, that's 12C, it was a biosolid that or scheme, which again, acceptable to authority with the specification, then that activity was exempt. And majority of water corporation comply with that, the biosolids, how the specification was met, and that specification was publication 943. Now in 2017, all these two regulations and the specification or the requirements were considered, and then the waste code, which is K400 for two types of waste, K400 and H. That was considered that, this is the way we have to manage. In our previous lecture, we have explained, what is the mirror code, which is M. Carlos, can you please just point out onto this one? M and pre, how this is managed. So we will go into that one in a minute. So this is how.
Just give me,
sorry.
Just give me 1 second, zoom in on that one so people can see that. So we are looking here at the regulations,
Yeah.
and what Shabazz is pointing at this schedule 5, and then we are looking at the K400. Yeah, you can continue, Shabazz.
Yeah, so K400, as you can see here, K400, which is number 61, treated sewage solid and sludge and does not meet the permit condition of blah blah and all that, which is the connected to the biosolid supply, the permission activity. So this is how this is applied, that what is the classification of biosolid, which is K400H. And the next one, please, Carlos, go a little bit. NH, and NH is, yeah, this one, K400NH, which is the biosolid, item 62, biosolid that meet the permit condition. In the permit relation to item 23A15 biosolid applied or used in table schedule 1. So what that means, K400 is a mirror code, which is M code, not the pre-classified, but M code. M code is, if there is M code, it's always M code will come with two codes, waste codes, NH and H. NH is non-hazardous and H is hazardous. So NH and Carlos, what we are showing, Carlos, is just a little bit, yeah. Just go to the slides back again, please. No, to the slides, please.
Yeah, there's a bit of delay, so you'll see it.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
so that's what, all those regulations are summarized, as you can see in EP regulation 2021 with the waste codes classification, 2 waste codes, and connected to the permission activity, which will show you in the next slides. Just go to the next slide, please. Carlos, I think we are jumping. Yeah. So that specification. I think yours could be. Yeah, that we have explained. Just go next one. Yeah, so it's in 1970, what was the specification? Specification. Carlos, I think your computer is.
Yeah, it's having a bit of delay. So which slide you want?
Before that, yeah, 1971, the previous one. Yeah, go to the next one, please.
This is the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, go to the next. I think something is wrong with the.
So which slide you are after,
okay.
Shabazz? So we got
okay.
past and present. Then we got
yes. Okay, stay there. Okay, stay there.
All right.
Yeah, so this is 1970 how the industrial waste resource regulation with the specification, as I explained that the specification acceptable to authority was publication 943, and now these in the new act, the two waste codes are there. Specification state of knowledge is still 943, and on top of that is publication 1288, and it is also applicable, which was used for very specific biosolids, but that is not available now. And then the reuse for the NEMP, if PFAS NEMP is there, PFAS contaminant is there, then PFAS NEM is applicable. So 2017, these are the requirements for biosolids under NH and H codes if somebody has to use or supply these biosolids to others. Next, please. Yes. So what is the license versus permit condition? So it's here, the trade waste, the process, the outputs, from that process can be NH and H, and then these waste has to go to lawful place, and lawful place for non-hazardous waste, which is the first one, can be Schedule 15. But just remember that if it's going to it's a lawful place for hazardous waste, it's a reportable priority waste, and that can be A01 facility, or we can link this one with A03 facility. So that is why now the lawful place, which we explained in our previous lecture, that how outputs from the waste treatment process where it can end up. Next, please. So this is just the recap. If people remember that how the 3 C's and 3 D's are applied to the waste code, different classification. So this is if you guys can have our previous lecture, and then that can explain how the hazardous and non-hazardous material can be established under the mirror code. I think we can go into this one a little bit. Carlos, if you can explain that,
Yeah, to give you like a brief, very quick summary from the previous lecture. In this case that we are talking about biosolids as K400NH, or sewage sludge as K400H. So you follow this path. So if it's non-hazardous, it goes through this path. If it's hazardous, go through here. The waste code assigned is what we have been mentioning here as K400, and then you check on column 6 if it's priority reportable or reportable priority waste for transport. So that's the waste code is the one that is going to tell you from this table what are those conditions, and then from there is where it gets determined. Okay, is this industrial waste, or is reportable priority waste? So you see that all those columns are yes, like in the case of K400H. So then that waste stream is RPW. If it's NH, so it might be just priority waste, or it could become industrial waste. And when there are disputes or you cannot find your waste stream here, so that's when we follow the path of designation. So that's in in a quick summary what we explained in the previous lecture.
Yeah, thank you. But the next one, yeah, next slide, please.
Yeah, it just takes a few seconds.
Yeah. So what are okay? If it's a biosolids are produced from somewhere, so then you know why. What is the permission? How the permission is required? You know, so permission has got these 4 or 5 levels, which is the licenses, permits, registration, determination or declaration of use, and regulation 63 exemptions. So this is how the risks are managed, you know, for any waste, and biosolids are also critical into this one, that, you know, where they sit, is a license required or registration or permit, or can be used, you know, determination and all that. Determinations are basically the tool that, you know, EPA set some specification. And those specifications, if we set that one, then those materials are exempt if you comply with the specification of those wastes under determination. The same way, declaration is also for use, but declaration can be both ways. Both ways means, you know, from industry point of view, and if industry sets declaration of use, or EPA set declaration of use. So that is, again, you know, depends on the situation, that if industry is saying that yes, or say for the sake of argument, biosolids we can use it. Okay, so they can apply for that one under the declaration of use, but that will be industry set declaration of use. The same way in regulation 63, there are various waste which can be authorized to receive industrial waste. So this is in a way it's a whole permission activity sets in that way. And now we go to the biosolids and just prescribe permission activities. I'll explain in a minute. The next slide, please. How it works. Yeah. So prescribed permission activities, if Schedule 1 of EPA Regulation 2021 explained that, you know, what activities are permission activities and what approval is required. Say, for the sake of argument here in number 1, is saying A01, reportable priority waste management. Biosolids which can be hazardous. So then for that one, maybe A01, and what is required? Prescribed development activity and prescribed operating activity. Operating activity is license, and development activity is basically, you know, the previous how we used to have works approvals. So in this case, works approval and license is required. So now we call works approval development activity and the operating license as operating activity. As we explained you in slide 15, just go to slide 15 also, Carlos, just for again, you know, to explain everybody what is required.
Here we go, 15.
Yes, here. So that what I was explaining, you know, for license. Now we will show, you know, for what activity permit is required and for what activity registration is required. These are the 3 layers, you know, license, permit, and registration. But declaration or determination of use is not mentioned in those columns. So these 3 will be are mentioned: licenses, which is operating license, and then the permits and registration. But for before that, development activity or pilot activity. That is a different one. Just remember that. So we will find out, for biosolids under NH or H, what is required. So this is what we want to explain here for biosolid, what is required. Now just go to the next, that slide, please. Yeah, so for biosolids, the activities which are A01, A03, A04, A14, A15, or A16 can be applicable. But just go that one first, please, Carlos, previous one. Carlos?
Yeah, it's in the previous one.
Yeah, just stay there. Stay there. Yeah. So these are various activities. If from the schedule 1, if you guys can see, various activities, just like A15, column 23, A15 biosolids. What is required under biosolids in column 4? Permits. You understand what is A15 and yes, this one. So for that one, what is required? Prescribed permit activity only. But for A13 waste and just like I'm just saying, A13 or A14, what is required? Registration. So this is somebody has to look first that under these activities, what is the permissioning required? So permissioning for A15 biosolid supply or use with the license, under the act of the activities A13. So what is required is industrial prescribed permit activity. So that is for A15 biosolid supply or use. What that means, development license is not required and operating license is not required, but this is only permit activity. All right, next slide now, please.
Yeah, just bear with me. It takes a few seconds to show up.
All right. Yes, so if we go to the A15 now, these are all from that schedule. All permit activities are mentioned here. And if we go to the A15, A15 is number 7, biosolid supply or use. And biosolid supply or use, the conditions of the permit will be all these conditions, which I don't know, we can show them the all condition, Carlos, or not? Yeah, here. If you click A15.
I'm just dragging the website. So this is how it looks. If you go to A15, yeah, it shows you the conditions.
Yeah, go to the A15. Yeah. So these are all conditions, but these are very well general, or you can say the standard conditions. But depending on the specific activity of biosolid use or supply, EPA can also add more condition in that permit. So that all can have a look, all what is in these conditions, and accordingly they can see their situation, what are they are tackling in.
So, for example, one of the conditions that is important here, despite that all of this in general, is this: you must ensure that the biosolid product meets the biosolids classification required for the intended use.
Yeah.
And so on.
Or just like, bonding or whatever is required and how they have to capture and all that. So these standard conditions are available to look for. Anybody can have a look on these conditions from our website under A15, which is a permit activity for biosolid supply and use. Thank you, Carlos.
All right, so just bear with me a couple of seconds while I drag this out, and then we can go to the next one.
Yeah, thank you. So that was about the biosolids and how biosolids are managed, and what are the requirements, or permit requirements, and what are the conditions which you have shown, and now we go to the little bit on what is the difference between sewage versus biosolids. So sewage and biosolids, these are two different things, So sewage sludge comes out from wastewater treatment plant, but biosolids are when they are prepared as per the specification. And go to the next one, please, Carlos. So sewage sludge, why this is critical, to understand what is a sewage and biosolids. Biosolids are, as we call it, biosolids. There's no liquid in there. So solid, liquid, and solid. How we can check that the material is solid or liquid. So in our protocol, which is the Waste Classification Assessment Protocol, publication 1827, in Appendix E, how we can determine between liquid and solid. These are the conditions that has all these things, and particularly spadable and non-spadable can determine that material or matter what you are dealing is liquid or solid. Lab test is also available, which is called paint filter test. But paint filter test, we recognize that nowadays maybe filters are not easily available. So, but this is the test, which is the US EPA method 9095B. That is called paint filter test to distinguish between solid and liquid. Next slide, please, Carlos. And why solid and liquid is important? Because for disposal of liquid waste is banned from landfill. Liquid can't go to any landfill. And that is the regulation 23, particularly is described that, other waste, including liquid waste, if somebody wants to dispose that material, license is not issued. So all what that means is all these waste and few others are, I think, all these are banned from landfill. So liquid waste is, therefore solid and liquid need to be distinguished, that what you guys are dealing and where is it disposing or reusing, and which way is reused or recycled. Thank you, Carlos. Next one. Then the classification of biosolids. You guys, I think, are familiar with this table, which is from publication 943. And if we say T1 C1 grade for all purpose uses, so that's the requirement of T1 and C1. To understand all that. But the next one, please, next slide, please, Carlos. So that's the T1 and C1 grade, explanation. It's just how the T1 grade is prepared with various technologies or whatever the processes are used, and how to comply with the concentration, the contaminants. So that's why this is critical to prepare that your biosolids are at least 3 years, and we know that one water authority has 1 year, but that's okay. Now in the new act we have the options to go into the innovative thinking that, you know, it's 3 years is written here, but if somebody can prepare biosolids with 2 years drying or 1 year drying, so then in this act, you know, we have the options to take that one and approve or decide on that, you know. So it's a good option, you know, available now. How water authorities can look into these areas that only of the 3 years, less than 3 years can be done now, depending on the situations. Next slide, please, Carlos. Right, Carlos. Next slide. Next, yes. So as per the definition from 943, if biosolids are not prepared at least with T3C2 biosolids, the solids do not meet these criteria are defined as sewage sludge. So that is the difference between sewage sludge and biosolids. If those are not prepared as per the conditions in 943, they are sewage sludge. And I think that's the what, you know, what I want to talk on that.
Yeah, and I
Thank you,
just
Carlos.
probably recap on this section about the approval pathways. So yeah, this is just like a summary of what we explain here, and taking some concepts from the previous presentation. That is, what are the approval pathways? So look for the classifications of the 3 Cs as the regulation 2021 and the waste code guidelines. So check what is the appropriate waste code, what is the activity. When we say activity is what are the processes happening on those inputs that they become certain outputs. Then we spoke about the Schedule 1 with the Schedule 5. So Schedule 1 is activity. So that's when Shabazz was mentioning it, A1, A3, A15 activities. And Schedule 5 in the regulations are the waste codes. So matching these two, so that gives you the indication if a waste code is reportable or not reportable, and what are the sort of permits required depending on the activity. And it says here, so connect the biosolids with the activity. So those that meet the conditions are priority waste, so non-hazardous. If they don't meet the conditions, then they are RPW. Another way to see it, very simple, is when you are working on those approval pathways, is understand these 4 questions. What are you receiving? So this is the trade waste. What are you planning to do with it? So this is the activity or your processes. What are your process outputs? So what is coming out of that process? And where are your outputs going to? So this is what defines lawful place. And then from those questions, how do you tell better the story as a water corporation? So it's basically breaking down those questions. So I'm not going to go through all these, but yeah, just to give you a quick summary. So what are you receiving? Understand your feedstock, how you sample, where it comes from. What are you planning to do with it? Understand your process, how updated PNIDs, how updated block flow diagrams, understand the difference between a block flow diagram and a process flow diagram. Use your state of knowledge. Is this best practice? What are you comparing it to? In terms of the process outputs, are you really producing biosolids? So you just tell that they are dry, maybe they are not biosolids, they are just sewage sludge. So have ready all those questions. In terms of engineering, is as Shabazz was showing in the slide before, like consider those engineering controls, like how you are storing those materials. When we look at this section here, on the conditions. So when you look at the conditions here, so then there is mention of some of those basic engineering controls, and then where they are going. So where those.
Excuse me, Carlos. I am aware of the time, and we have a few interesting questions that. Yeah, we may. I don't know if you want to continue this section, and then we go to the questions.
No, I'll finish the last slide, and then we can go to the questions. So yeah, so this is how you tell the story, and then the next slide is a bit of more details about that, but you'll get them on the handouts. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So the next presentation is going to be around industrial emissions, but let's leave those this time for the questions.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much to both of you, Shabazz and Carlos. Yeah, we can give a round of applause to them for this presentation. Now I'm going to go through the questions. So the first question that we have here is about restrictions. So are there any restrictions on what an authority can accept via the sewerage system through a trade waste agreement?
What's the question? Sorry.
So it's about restrictions, whether just to know whether a water authority has any restriction on what to accept in the sewerage system.
Yeah, that is basically, water corporations, their restrictions, we don't restrict that. EPA is not the trade waste regulator. Trade waste regulator is water authorities. So that's what, their trade waste agreement, somebody has to comply with. So we are only concerned that, if waste is not going to the trade waste through the sewerage system, then we are regulating those type of waste.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next question, is EPA working on a determination for biosolids to establish a set of standard conditions that may circumvent the need for an A15?
Determinations, as we explained, that determination is a specification. At this stage, we are not working on that, but I can check with our policy area. So because what we consider, this is already covered in our regulation, how to manage, and that's why permit activity is required, not the license. So permit is in a way equivalent to the determination, depending on considering various scenarios. So determination will be maybe one scenario or few scenarios, but in this case with the permit, all scenarios are captured. So that in my opinion, permit is, I think, is more reasonable in this area, but we can check with our policy area that if they are considering or not at this stage, but I'm not sure. Thank you.
Next question, how does EPA determine the level of risk and therefore whether a license, a permit, or the OU is required?
Yeah, that depends on, and Carlos will explain in a minute, I think, on this one. This is actually, depends on the waste. I'm only talking about the waste area, okay? So waste area means in a Schedule 5 of Schedule 5 or 1, Schedule 5, where the activities are in our regulation, various activities are mentioned, and waste related activities are A activities, A01, A02, and A0 till, Carlos, can you show that slide, where A's are mentioned? So what that means is, just say here. So A type of activities are, if in Schedule 1, all A type of activities are related to the waste codes, and waste codes determine that the material is hazardous or non-hazardous, or what level of risks are involved as a environment for the environment or the health. So those are determined with reportable priority waste and priority waste or industrial waste. And in that way, we check the risk, and those risks are controlled in that way. Have I answered that question to somebody?
I was thinking that to complement the answer, hopefully that answers the question is those 4 questions that I mentioned towards the end of the slides is understand what you are receiving. So this is the feedstock and what determines the risks. Understand your process. So this is going to be the activity, and then understanding what comes out. So having clarity of what comes in, what happens here, and what comes out is gonna determine the risks, and that's how EPA evaluates if one activity is riskier than another one. So if those questions are not clear, like there is no clarity on where the trade waste comes from, so therefore there is no clarity on what is gonna come out. So then that makes more difficult to assess X or Y activity.
Yeah, and Carlos show that the waste code one, I'll explain in one slide with the waste codes or anything.
Yeah, just give me 1 sec. A slide with the waste codes.
Yeah, and that will explain, that answer, or whoever asked this question, maybe. Yeah, so this waste code, if you guys can see that, these waste codes will be Carlos on EPA Regulation 2021. So few waste codes are M and few are pre. Pre means, if pre classified as reportable for transaction or reportable for transport, and few are only priority waste, but few can be priority waste but industrial waste. So in that way, the risk for that material, which is the material, the waste code, how these will be connected to this schedule, the permission activities, and then the risks are managed with the license and permit and registrations. I think I have. If I haven't answered, please. You guys can send again, that question to us separately if I haven't answered that properly. Thank you.
Yeah. For what I can read in the questions here, it's like there's a bit of a confusion whether biosolids is classified as hazardous or non-hazardous. There's a question here, for instance, says if we use publication 943 to classify our biosolids, they are K400H, so T3. If we use an A15 permit, they are K400NH. So if we have an A03 permit, then an A15 permit is exempt. So are our biosolids K400H or NH? So it looks like there's a bit of some doubts around that.
Yeah. So if A03, if somebody has A03 license, and with that one they are managing their biosolids, they are exempt. Sorry, not exempt. They are managing their biosolid under A03. Okay, but if they are not managing under A03, so then A15 can be applicable.
And when you mean managing under A03, remember when we explained about the definitions.
Yes.
So if you are using A15 and you're saying biosolids supply or use, remember the definition of biosolids. So it has to meet the criteria of biosolid. Otherwise, it's gonna be sewage sludge. Yes. And I think that's where a lot of confusion comes in. They say, there might be a process where you have some feedstock that is very clear that they are not gonna meet the biosolids criteria, and what comes out of the plant still gets called biosolids, but that's incorrect. So you might be seeing that there are processes where what comes in is not going to meet the biosolids criteria, therefore it's sewage sludge. So then the A15 is not going to apply. So that's why we insist That is very important that you know what happens, what you receive, and what happens in the process to be able to reach this criteria according with the definition.
Yeah.
If it doesn't meet this criteria, then it's sewage sludge, and a different activity is the one that is going to apply.
Yeah. And A03 is more details are there, you know, if you read the columns. I think A03 is not mentioned here, Carlos.
Let me just drag it
Yeah.
from the web. Yeah. While you do
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
because it takes a while. So while you do that, then yeah, just explain that.
Yeah. So A03 means the water authority's land. Okay. So that, and A0 permit offsite is A15. So that can be a difference, you know, between these two. A03 just yes, A03. Can you see all the details written here? It's a slightly, you know, you guys have to put your, you know, whatever your scenario is into this, the capacity, the volume, and how you guys want to use, you know, the sewage treatment. So that is slightly different than the A15. But all this one, for this one, development activity is required and operating activities. What that means is the license and old works approval is required for A13, A03. But A15, only permit is required for offsite use.
Yeah, so let's compare those two.
Yeah, so that's the difference between A03 and A015.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thank you very much for that. So yeah, we're running out of time, so I will read the last question, and then maybe we can review the list of questions to see if we can. There's anyone which hasn't been addressed, and we can clarify it in the handout if that is okay. So the last question is: are there any implications from being classed as liquid other than for being unable to be disposed to landfill? Is there any implication for transportation or land application?
Sorry, for the biosolids.
Yeah, I think they're referring to the biosolids here. Yeah.
So biosolids, as I said, you know, biosolids are not liquid.
Yeah, sorry, not for biosolids,
so,
for trade waste on sewage.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's where probably we start with. If I like to put it in simple terms, if it's a liquid, so then don't call it biosolids. You know, a biosolids is not a liquid. So if that material is a liquid, it could be two things. It could be trade waste, or it could be sewage sludge.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I will argue with that one. We have liquid biosolids, a T2 grade.
Then that's incorrect, Arambi. So remember that we are talking here about the regulatory framework. So from the regulatory framework, you cannot have a biosolids that they are liquid. They have to be solid from this definition.
What we saw this water applied liquid biosolids through RD&D approval 3 years back. We treated lagoon sludge to a T2 grade standards and liquid injected to one of our own farm. What will happen? That sort of practice is out of. I mean, no more.
If it's a liquid, then it's a sewage sludge.
No, but we categorize that as a T2 grade liquid sludge, liquid. So therefore, it's a biosolids. I know the difference between liquid and biosolids and liquid, but
yeah.
Where is the is there a room for us to categorize liquid, the non-spadable?
Yeah, like liquid biosolids. That would be that would be a good question then to policy or permissions. But
sure.
But from what we are showing, like we are just showing what is current regulatory framework. Yeah, it's an incorrect term saying liquid biosolids, because we were talking all this hour about saying that biosolids need to meet certain criteria, and one part of the key criteria is that biosolids are not a liquid.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe it will be a matter of adjusting the nomenclature there.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think we're have exceeded our time allocation. So I want to thank Shabazz and Carlos for their presentation and also for answering nearly all our questions. So yeah, I want to remind you that we have recorded this and it's going to be shared in the next few days. Also, I want to thank all of you for attending to this presentation. In the next weeks, you will have some news about our next lecture. So thank you very much to all of you, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a
guys.
great day. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Right.
Bye.